All right, so first of all, like obviously while I go over these, we'll talk about your test as well, but like format on your test, you would not know there are two triangles before you start. It's not like you're going to get the 6 blanks ahead of time. It could say, some of the questions flat out say, use law of sines, use law of cosines to solve, and then it will say something about law of sines. If there are two triangles, make sure you find both. That's how the wording would be. There are, however, some that just say solve, and it doesn't say law of sines and law of cosines. So you've got to know based on what you're given what you're using. So remember, I would say know what law of cosines is, because that's easier to find, and then anything else is law of sines. So law of cosines we use for side angle side and for side side side. Just those two cases we use law of cosines. Everything else we use law of sines. So when you get one like this where you've got A is 53 degrees, so like let's say this is A, this is B, this is C. A is 53 degrees, side A is 12.7, and side B is 13.7. I know that's not side angle side, and I know it's not side side side, so I know I'm using law of sines. You have two sides and the non-included angle, which means you have your ambiguous case. So that's the other thing you got to pay attention to. The full ratio you've got is A. So I would do A over sine of angle A, which is 53, equals, this time I have one of the B's. So B 13.7 over the sine of angle B. Then you're going to cross multiply 13.7 times the sine of 53 and then end up 12.7 sine of B. And then we're going to divide both sides by 12.7. These are going to cancel out. And I get 13.7 sine of 53 divided by 12.7. And I get the sine of B is like 0.8615, so on and so forth. And you're not going to round it, but you're going to take the sine negative 1 of it. So sine negative 1 of that answer, second sine, second answer. And I get angle B is 59.487, so 59.49 degrees. And because this is a possible two triangle scenario, we say that's angle B1. So B1 is 59.49 degrees. And then to find B2, so we don't forget, we're going to do 180 minus what you get for B1. So 180 minus 59.49, and you get 120.51. And those are your two angles for B. So you can choose if you want to stick to the B's and finish out all the finish out triangle 2, or if you want to go back to B1, it doesn't matter. As long as you're comfortable with whichever method you're using, the order doesn't matter. So if I come back and I want to find, so this is B1, now I'm missing both C1, angle C1, and side C1. So angle C1 is the last angle in the first triangle. I would find it by doing 180 minus the A that they gave me, which is 53, minus the B1 that I found, 59.49. 180 minus 53 minus 59.49. And I get angle C1 is 67.51. And then the last thing I need to find in the first triangle is side C1. I use the A's, the ones I originally got, so 12.7 over the sine of 53 equals side C1 over the sine of 67.51. Cross multiply, so 12.7 times the sine of 67.51 divided by the sine of 53, and I get C1 is 41.69. Or sorry, 14.69. Now my triangle 1's complete, so I go to triangle 2. I've got all the information they originally gave me, so I've got side A, side B, angle A. I'm missing side, I found B2, I need to find angle C2, and side C2. So C2 is the last angle in the second triangle. I would do 180 minus the original one that they gave me, 53, minus the 120.51. And this is where you know if there's a second triangle or not. If this number was negative, then I know there's no second triangle. It is positive, which means there's a second triangle. And the last thing I have to find is side C2. So I use the A's from the original, 12.7 over the sine of 53 equals side C2, which is what I'm trying to find, over the sine of 6.49. 12.7 times the sine of 6.49 divided by the sine of 53, and I get side C2 equals 1.797, so 1.80 would be side C2. And then all 6 of these would be part of your answers. Questions? Other questions from the homework from 8-1? So if you know you need the practice on the second triangle, that's number 5 from that homework. And you can practice another version and get extra numbers and then keep practicing until you're good. How about 8-2 homework? Questions from 8-2? Oops. Kiara. All right, so this one is Heron's area formula. Remember, you know 2 area formulas for your test. One is if you're given side, angle, side, and one is that has a name called Heron's formula. That's if you're given side, side, side. So the first thing we have to do is find S, which is A plus B plus C over 2. So I'm going to add 11.18 plus 7.63 plus 15.7, and I'm going to divide that by 2, and I get 17.255, and I'm not going to round it. It says to round your answer to 2 decimal places, but you don't want to round the S. So then the area equals the square root of 17.255 times 17.255 minus 11.18. 17.255 minus 7.63 and 17.255 minus 15.7. So I get 39.609, which is going to round that up. And it would be, if there was a unit, it would be unit squared because it's area, but they didn't give you a unit, so it's just that number. All right, so then this is 6. So again, I'll say it again, but there will be a time on your test in which it doesn't indicate which one you've got to use. It's just going to say solve the triangle using law of sines or law of cosines. So you have to know based on the information that you're given which one you're going to use. First of all, if it's one of each letter, and there's 2 sides, it's side, angle, side. If it's all lowercase, it's side, side, side. So those are both the times you're going to use law of cosines. So this is 2 sides and the included angle. If you wanted to draw it out, you certainly could. But for me, law of cosines, I don't tend to draw it. I think it's a little bit more obvious. If there's one of each letter, that's your side, angle, side. If there's one uppercase and 2 are lowercase. And then if they're all lowercase, then that's your side, side, side. Both of those scenarios lead to law of cosines. So you want to find in the order of the largest one first. I'm sorry, no, you can't. You have to find the missing side. That's for side, side, side. You have to find side B. So B squared equals the square root of A squared plus C squared minus 2AC cosine B. So square root of 8 squared plus 5 squared minus 2 times A times C times the cosine of angle B, which is 42. Second square root, 8 squared plus 5 squared minus 2 times 8 times 5 times the cosine of 42. And B should have been 5.435, so 5.44. Then you got to be careful in what order you go if you're switching to law of sines. So I would just recommend sticking to law of cosines. If you stick to law of cosines and you want to find, eventually you're going to find angle A and C. So did you find C first or A first? Okay, so cosine of A would equal B squared plus C squared minus A squared over 2BC. So I'm going to end up doing cosine -1. Remember, pay attention to how you group it. So B is what we found, 5.44 squared plus C, 5 squared minus 8 squared, and then close your parentheses, divided by, open your parentheses again, 2 times 5.44 times 5. So second cosine, open the parentheses, 5.44 squared plus 5 squared minus 8 squared, close them, divided by, open again, 2 times 5.44 times 5. And I get angle A is 99.957. So this actually bumps it up. So if you had, so these, and I think I put it in the instructions, but WebAssign is computer-based, right? So it actually finds them and keeps them exact the whole time, whereas we rounded this. So 5.44 is no longer 100% accurate, which is why this is a little off. So 99.96 would be an answer I would have taken. And if you're, I don't think it's going to happen on the test. If you're like within a one, first of all, test is multiple choice. So it should be obvious which one's there, okay? But just be careful, because that's why, like, this one's just a little bit off, which then means, like, which I think it gave you. If you had put 9.96, it should have marked it correct, because there's a margin of error. And then if I did 180 minus the first angle that's given, which is 42, minus the 99.96, it should have been 38.04 degrees for the last one. So again, WebAssign did give a little wiggle room on there just because of the rounding, but it's not necessarily going to match because we round and WebAssign does not. And it only happens for law of cosine when you have to find that third side, because the third side then gets used. Other questions from 8-2 homework? Sure. Yeah. So we're going to talk a little bit about logistics of your test, and then we're going to get into the review. So first of all, as of now, like, we're doing some final tweaking on it, but it is 20 questions. It is all multiple choice. And it is all calculator. So that does not mean, like, obviously there are answers that you're going to keep exact. There are answers like on your unit circle where your answer is going to be pi over 3, and it's not going to be a decimal answer. Pi over 3 is going to be the one on your test. So you just want to be careful with those. And there are verifying. I would say the multiple choice sometimes makes that verifying tricky, because it's actually like you could see one that says all except. So I think like some of them multiple choice, some of them verifying will be pretty straightforward. Like, here, verify this and then pick from the choices. But then you are going to get ones that say like all except, and you've got to figure out from A, from B, from C, from D, which one does not work. So to me, those are the tricky side of multiple choice verifying. You will see stuff like that. There's not a lot of those, but you will see stuff like that. Like, it could say simplify the expression, one of your verifying. So, like, well, I'll make it easy. I'll say let's say it's sine of x times cotangent of x. Let's say it's something super easy like that, right? So if I wanted to verify this, I could change it to what? Sine of x times cosine over sine. And then these would cancel, and my answer is cosine. So cosine might be an answer here. But then also there might be something that says 1 over secant, which is what? Also cosine. Or it could say, I don't even know, I can't make stuff up off the top of my head. But other ones that also mean that it could be actually like step 2 that was there. It could say sine of x, cosine of x over sine of x, which would also be cosine, okay? And then maybe one answer says cosine squared of x or something like that. And so this is not true. So that would be the one you would circle. Yeah. That's if you're solving. So that was if you were solving. That's not simplifying. So that was 7-3. That was if you're solving. I'll get there in a second. So that is how you would see 7-1, 7-2. Okay. We're still in talks about giving you this square. Well, I'll let you know as soon as I know. If you're getting that square, as of now, you are at least getting the unit circle, but I'm not sure about the square, and I'm not sure about your law of cosines formulas. I would say go with, you're not going to get them. Learn those really well, because you need to know them anyways. And then, oh, so that's another one. Like, this could have been E. Could have been sine, what was our answer? Sine of pi over 2 minus x, right? Because that would also be cosine. So all of those things could be in that list, and then you got to figure out which one doesn't work, is what that all except means.
I think we should get the square.
Well, thank you. Your suggestion has been noted.
Because like that's kind of tricky though.
So, I mean, I don't give that square in pre-calc honors advanced, so I'm okay with either. I also don't give the unit circle in pre-calc honors advanced, so.
It's math. It's not English.
We have like spring break.
Again, suggestion has been noted.
Wait, when's the test?
Test is Wednesday.
I think it'd be before spring break.
Oh my gosh, yes.
We move it to Thursday.
No, we may not. I'm not coming in on Thursday.
Wait, we have school Thursday?
No. Yeah, Kiara.
Besides like the Pythagorean identities, do we have to know like
So like all that stuff.
like there would be like a
Like if this is that's a fair game and that's a cofunction,
But like, what's the point of that one?
right? Or it could have said cosine of negative x. That could have been an answer, and that one actually does. All of those work. Everything on that list except for cosine squared of x works. So
doing the whole square.
you know most of that stuff. Like you know all the stuff at the top. You know your reciprocal identities, right? Your even and odds and your cofunctions are super easy. Like people get so scared because there's a fraction. They're so easy. You just have to know like sine goes with cosine, cosine with sine. So those, and then anytime you see pi over 2 minus an angle, that's a cofunction. So I will let you know. I'm hoping to know by the end of today about whether you're getting this reference sheet or not. But
How about the cosine?
same thing. I'll know by end of day today. Okay, so that would be like the 7-1, 7-2 kinds of questions. And then the 7-3, which was what your quiz was on. So for these, we used, where's my unit circle? We used the trig identities and we used the unit circle. Hang on. So for 7-3, obviously you use these two things. These are where you're solving. Your instructions on the test always say 0 to 2 pi. So there's no adding of the interval. You're using your full natural circle. And then there's no multiple angle ones on the test. So you could still have to factor. You could still have to solve. The difference between the quiz and the test, let's say, like, I mean, this is again, like, let's just say you got tan squared x minus 3 equals 0. And it says to solve it on the interval of 0 to 2 pi. I would get tan squared of x equals 3, and then tan of x would equal plus and minus square root 3. So I'd be looking for everywhere in my unit circle where tangent is root 3. My advice would be to give yourself that little note when you get your unit circle that you're over 6 for tangents, root 3 over 3. Your over 4 is 1, and your over 3 is root 3. At least give yourself that much. And then if you wanted to add on, this would be undefined, and this would be 0. You could. But at least give yourself that much so you don't fill it all the way in. I think that's a waste of time. So if it's an over 3 and it's positive or negative, I know my answer is all of the over 3s. So this would be pi over 3. This would be 2 pi over 3, 4 pi over 3, and 5 pi over 3. So again, because the instructions will give you the full interval, you'd be using your full unit circle. Yeah. Correct, yeah. And then let's say the difference between now and then was, let's say it says tan squared of x minus 2 equals 0. So if I wanted to solve this, I would have done tan squared of x equals 2. And then I would have square rooted both sides, put a plus and minus. Tan of x would equal plus and minus root 2. And without our calculators, we would have said that's not on our unit circle. But now that we have calculators, you can actually find this value. The directions, because it will be this, will say make sure you're in radians. And your calculator, you're going to have to switch back and forth between the two. Because these kinds of questions are in radians, right? But when we solve for our triangles, we're in degrees. So I would switch, everybody practice. I would switch my calculator to radians. And I would get tan negative 1 of root 2, and then tan negative 1 of negative root 2. And this is 0.955, so on and so forth. And second, tan negative square root 2 is negative 0.955, so on and so forth. So I think it tells you what to round to. I don't know if it's 2 decimal, I don't remember, but if you would use your calculator for those.
For the ones that need degrees, would it say to switch back to degrees?
Yes, yep. I think they all say them, but all the triangle ones, if the question's going to give it to you in degrees, but I'm pretty sure they say it. Your calculator should be in degrees because they're shuffled. So they're all in different orders. Yep.
Is it always going to show 0 to pi? I mean 2 pi or no?
For all of the solving of the equations, it is 0 to 2 pi.
So
Yep.
nothing for the pi or the
Correct.
Wait, we're gonna have to switch from negative to
Yeah.
how
All the trig ones, all the trig equations, all the solving are in radians because it says from 0 to 2 pi. Like there's one on the review that says from 0 to 360. That's how you would know that that was supposed to be in degrees. These are from 0 to 2 pi, which will say radians. I'm almost certain the questions say your calculator needs to be in radians on that one. And then when we get to solving triangles, those are all in degrees. So you switch back to degrees. The other thing that was not on your quiz for solving equations because you didn't have a calculator is using the quadratic formula to solve. So let's say, for example, you've got tan squared x, actually like 2 tan squared x minus tan x plus 2 equals 0. And it said to solve that. Okay, first of all, it can't be factored, right? If I multiply 2 times 2, I get 4, and there are no factors of 4 that sum to -1. So that's how I know it's not factorable. Which means you have to solve it using quadratic formula. So quadratic formula, x equals -b plus and minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. In this one, a is 2, b is -1, and c is 2. Make this a -2. Sorry, I think that's not. It will give you an I. This would be -2. It's still not factorable, but. So now I'd get -b, which is 1, plus and minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2 times a. And I get 1 plus and minus the square root of 1. This would be -8 times -2, which is positive 16 over 4. And I'd get 1 plus and minus square root 17 over 4. I got to keep going with this. This breaks into 2. 1 plus square root 17 over 4 and 1 minus square root 17 over 4. So I get 1 plus square root 17 divided by 4, and this is 1.28077, so on and so forth. And then 1 minus square root 17 divided by 4. And this is -0.78077, so on. So that is what the tangent equals. This is not solved yet. So tan of x would equal this, and tan of x would equal that, which means the last thing you're going to do is tan -1 those. So I'm going to tan -1, 1.28, and I'd get x equals 0.907, so 0.91. And then tan -1, this, -0.78, and I get x equals -0.66. So that would have two answers. They are both decimal format. You would keep your calculator in radians that whole time. But you will have one in which you're not going to be able to factor, and you're going to have to use quadratic. It literally says it in the directions too. So I would say those are the big differences between 7-3's quiz, which I'm hoping at least give you. If I can't, like if you guys all took it, if I can't give them back today, then I'm still waiting to hear. Then I'm going to give them to you tomorrow.
Well, if there is a quadratic.
Okay, then came 8-1, which was law of sines. And so in this one, obviously A over sine of A, B over sine of B, C over sine of B, sine of C. Okay, you take those two at a time, cross multiply, divide. This is where you can get your ambiguous case. So if it's side, side, angle, that's your ambiguous case. And that has three outcomes. It can either be no triangle, where when you go to find the first angle, it gives you something that's bigger than 1, and then when you go to inverse sine it doesn't work. One triangle, where you find B1, and then when you go to find B2, B and C2 is going to be negative. Or two triangles, and that's the one where you're going to have two complete sets of answers.
Do we have to rewrite like A to, like, if they give you what they give you for the second triangle or not?
Do you have to rewrite it, you mean?
Yeah, like on the answers.
Yeah, well, I mean, and they're multiple choice. So you'll see either it'll just give you, like, let's say you're missing angle A, side A, and angle B. It would say A1, lowercase a1 and side, an angle b2, like, I mean, an angle b1. Or you'll see 6 answers there. Both A's, both lowercase a's, both B's.
Do you know how many options there are for each question? Like how many multiple choice answers?
I think there's 4 or 5. Yeah. And then from this, you also have the area of an oblique triangle. And this is if you had side angle side. So if you had a side angle side, but you're finding the area, it's 1/2 AB sine of C, or 1/2 AC sine of B, or 1/2 BC sine of A. So in all of those scenarios, you're given two sides and the included angle. Those should be so easy. Every year somebody throws it off by doing like cosine here instead of sine. Okay, that is not, remember, there's actually no area formula in which you use cosine, because even Heron's you don't actually use cosine. So there's no area formula in which you use cosine. Okay, and then 8.2 was law of cosines. So there was two different types, one in which you're finding the sides, so a squared would equal b squared plus c squared minus 2bc cosine a. B squared is a squared, c squared minus 2ac cosine b. And c squared, a squared plus b squared minus 2ab cosine c. So these are all for side angle side. And then the ones where you're given side, side, side. So the cosine of A equals b squared plus c squared minus a squared over 2bc. Cosine of B, a squared plus c squared minus b squared over 2ac. And cosine of C, a squared plus b squared minus c squared over 2ab. This is all for side, side, side. Yeah.
The area ones will say just find the area of the triangle, or it'd be like find the area of the triangle using law of cosine.
No, it'll say find the area of the triangle. And this is Heron's formula. So it depends on what you're given. If it's side angle side, you use that first one.
You'll know
If it's side, 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 they'll give you 3 sides. Yeah. They're either going to give you lowercase a, lowercase b, lowercase c, and you use Heron's, or they're going to give you lowercase, lowercase, uppercase, but one of each letter. That's side angle side.
It'll say Heron's, right?
I don't know if it says Heron's or it just gives you side, side, side. Is that what you mean? Yeah. So then S equals A plus B plus C over 2, and then area equals square root of A of S minus A, S minus B, and S minus C. And those, again, you're using side angle side and side, side, side for law of cosines, that there's no such thing as an ambiguous case. You got to be careful on your calculator use for the second set where you're trying to find the angle. Remember, you got to make sure you group it in the numerator and the denominator. Those, be really careful, because those are the ones you'll get an error and you won't know why. All right, this is your review that's on Canvas. So this whole first page is all like the practice of verifying for 7.1 and 7.2. And then the solve is all the way up to 26. This would be 7.3. So notice that it says 0 to 360 or 0 to 2 pi. 0 to 360 means you need to be in degrees. 0 to 2 pi means you need to be in radians. Those are either going to be unit circle based, so you can pull your unit circle there. You could either be unit circle based, or if they're not unit circle based, that's where you're using your calculator. And then this is 8.1. It's 8.1 to 8.2 because I want you to be able to figure out which one is which. And it changes. Well, actually, I'm just going to tell you that, remember, you're looking for law of cosines or law of sines there based on side, 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 or side, angle, side would be law of cosines, and all the rest are sines. Same thing, try to figure out which ones are your ambiguous case ones. And then this area, it does give it to you in degree minute second for the area. So you can practice it. The one on the test I don't think does. I'm going to add the area using Heron's formula. So find area. Given A is 7.5, B is 6.2, and C is 7.1. So add that one.